Hello everyone, this is Roland. This will be number 8 in a series of Shedding Shackle mini lectures. This one will be about faith, what faith is. To a large extent, faith is learning to trust your own intuition instead of listening to other people. See, we all tend to listen to other people. We listen to authorities, teachers, experts, pundits. The world is filled with authorities, have you noticed? All manner of authorities. Religious authorities. See, and everywhere you look, there are authorities and experts. Well, one of your problems, if you're like most people, is that in your life you trusted more in what other people said, and even if they weren't authorities, even if it was just your some kid in your school or some person that you happen to know, and they said something, and then you believed what they said and you followed what they said, and look where it's gotten you. See, for the most part, most of our lives are totally misdirected. That's why we all have a kind of a free-floating anxiety, a sense of being off balance, a sense of not being completely solid. We admire people who are solid, okay? Well, sometimes they are, other times it's an act. But the people who are solid, if they're really and truly solid, centered, okay, often is because they have self-confidence. Now that's the other thing we want. We want self-confidence. Whenever I put up YouTube videos or articles on the web, one of the keywords that will bring people is self-confidence, finding self-confidence. See, because that's what we all want, but yet we doubt ourselves. See, we doubt ourselves, and then we listen to others, and they mislead us. So you need to learn to trust in your own intuition, what you know in your heart. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Okay? Let me give you a couple of examples. The first example is Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein didn't do well in school. Well, later he did when he was, a young adult. But when he was a kid, he didn't do well in school because he wanted to do his own stuff rather than the boring stuff that they had for him. Some of the teachers hated him. One teacher in particular hated him because he said Albert Einstein sat at the back of the room with a smile on his face. See? So the teacher hated him because what? Because Albert Einstein didn't bow and scrape in front of him and worship his great, see what I mean? And honor and esteem the teacher and all that stuff. Albert Einstein was more like Alfred E. Newman saying, what, me worry? More like Mark Twain or Tom Sawyer, thumbing his nose at authority, see? Which America has a long tradition of that. A long tradition, okay? So, but what did Albert Einstein trusted in his intuition. And then when he made his discoveries, they came from his intuition. They just came to him, okay? From his intuition, what he knew, what he wordlessly knew. And then later, they were proved. Okay? Two things they said about Albert. The first thing that's amazing is that they said he was unbudgeable. He trusted in what he knew in his heart. He trusted in what he knew. He had an intuitive sense, and he trusted in it and didn't doubt it. And sometimes he had to wait a long time before what he had discovered was finally verified by experiment. And when it was, he wasn't surprised because he knew that he was right. Okay, so that's one example. Okay. But if Albert Einstein had simply sat in class and taken notes and gotten good grades and yes sir, no sir, and just followed every little thing what they said, then he never would have made his great discoveries. Okay? He trusted what he knew in his heart. Now another example. Moses is another example. Remember, Moses grew up in the Pharaoh's household. Moses could have been a prince. He could have been a prince. But somehow he knew in his heart that there was a different destiny for him. Somehow he just knew in his heart. No one told him. He just sort of knew. So he left it all behind, and he went off to be a sheep herder in the desert for 40 years. See? And people, I'm sure everybody said, oh, see, people will always try to make you doubt yourself. They'll say, oh, Moses, how can you do this? You know, this is terrible. This is crazy. You're so... You're losing out on all the benefits and the perks and the money and the wealth and the power and the esteem and the pleasure and the comfort. So he went off to the desert for 40 years. But then, see, after that 40 years, when he was 80 years old, he was ready for God to use him. See, if Moses had decided to listen to everyone else when they said, no, don't go off to the desert, you have to stay here, then he never would have made the grade. Now a couple of other examples. True stories. A very famous man, I won't say his name, a very famous man and a nice man, one time was taking his little daughter to daycare. And when he brought his little daughter to daycare, she clung to his neck. She just clung to him as hard as she could, and she didn't want to go. She didn't want to go. She didn't want to go. And he sensed, he knew in his heart, that something wasn't right at that daycare. And so they turned around and they drove home. And he never put her back in that daycare again. See? He trusted what his intuition told him wordlessly. Well, then his daughter was happy. And later he found out that some terrible things were happening at that daycare. Terrible things. But what if he had doubted himself? See? What if he had gone into the daycare and said, oh, my daughter doesn't want to come today. And they said, oh, it's okay. Why, they're all that way. Why, just bring her in and we'll give her some cookies and everything. See? If he had doubted himself. And then he was greatly blessed. He was greatly blessed by God for this sort of thing. He trusted what he knew in his heart. Here's another story. True story. A man was very busy volunteering in church activities. So he was rarely home at night. He was always off serving on this committee and doing that and doing this and doing that. And one night they were sitting at the dinner table, his wife and him and his little daughter. And he was commenting about what he was going to go do that. He started to say that he was going to go do some more volunteering that evening, and his little daughter says, oh, Daddy, you're not going to be gone again, are you? And when she said that, he was stricken. It pierced right through his heart. The words of the little child awoke him to what he knew in his heart. See? She was confirming, verifying on the outside what he already knew in his heart. And from that day on, he cut back on his activities and spent a lot more time at home with great benefit. Okay, so those are all true stories. And there's another story which is similar to the one I told you about, the man who was taking his child to daycare. There was a mom who was taking her daughter to school. I guess maybe the first day of school, second, I don't know. Maybe it was the second week of school, I don't know. But you know, kindergarten, first grade. And her little daughter was crying. She didn't want to go, and she didn't want to go. Well, the mom looked into her heart, and she saw that it wasn't any kind of willfulness on the child's part. It was something told her wordlessly in her heart that it would be better for her to be with her daughter than to put her daughter into school. So she turned around and drove home. And then she homeschooled her child. And, you know, this was where it was, and she did it legally and properly, homeschooled the child. And then she spent many happy years with her child, watching her child grow and flower and develop. And she was with her all the way. and life was good, and life was sweet. All because in that delicate moment, she paid attention to what her intuition was telling her. See? Now, you know, some people say, well, how can God be so cruel, you know, throwing people into hell and blah, 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 you know, how, see? Well, you know what? He doesn't throw people into hell. They throw themselves into hell. See, every day we have, everybody has a chance. There are little moments where you could acknowledge the truth or deny the truth. And every day, most people, multiple times, deny the truth, deny what they know in their heart. See? And listen to what other people say. Why do they do that? Well, because there's always something selfish about it. See? The tried and true path that other people lay out for you, it sounds, they make it sound good. But look at what happened. Look at what happens. So, no, because people can't bear the truth. See, see, eventually when you deny the truth enough time, you're denying God his motive. See, he sends his intuition. Some people say, well, God has abandoned me. No, he hasn't. The way you know he hasn't is because you still have your intuition, which sometimes feels like conscience. But you doubt it. See, you have an innate, I guess maybe an inherited propensity to doubt what you know deep down and listen more to what other people say than to what you know in your heart. So you doubt yourself. So you go off and do whatever they say, and you're misled. Because what they say, see, they don't have understanding. See, they doubt themselves too. They doubt themselves. See, they lapped up whatever was given to them. And then they became authorities, and now they lord it over you as they were once lorded over. And they don't have understanding either, because they turned their back on understanding. That's what's the trouble with a lot of people to get out of school. See, they have a lot of book knowledge but no common sense. See, they turn their back on intuition. So, so you have to learn to trust what you know in your heart. But like I was saying, when you deny your intuition, you're denying God his moment. Instead, you listen to what other people say. See? Often for selfish reasons. Well, okay, or you don't want to rock the boat, and so you just go along to get along, see? So you deny the truth, deny the truth, deny the truth. And many moments too with our kids. Your child comes up to you and has a question for you, and you say, not now, I'm busy. See? Well, that's not true. You're not really that busy. So your child goes off and cries or feels bad. Well, when that happens, your daughter on the outside, her crying, for example, that should awaken you to what you know in your heart. You know you should answer your daughter's question. That's what parents are for. And you say, I'm sorry, my daughter. I'm sorry. I was mean. I was selfish. Okay? But no, people harden their heart. And then they blame the other. See, the other person makes them uncomfortable. The other person makes them aware of the truth, and the truth makes them uncomfortable, and then they become angry at the other person, or blame the other person for making them feel uncomfortable or bad, you see. Well, after thousands and thousands and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of such little moments of denying the truth, see, then the person is so guilty, so afraid of the light, that they will do anything to avoid the light. They hide in drinking and drugs and alcohol and work and fantasy and anything to avoid the light. See? So now you see how people, see, the alcoholic would rather sit in a bar somewhere in some horrible place, see, rather than face the truth about himself. So you could say he's living in hell, because he feels more comfortable there than in the truth, where he'd have to see the truth about himself in the light of truth, you see. There's an old joke. I don't know if you heard it or not, but a young man walked into a bar, and everybody said, what's a nice guy like you doing in a place like this? Well, years later, of course, he changes, compromises, and changes and devolves over the years. And so years later, he walks into the bar. Or no, years later, he walks into a nice place. And they say, what's a guy like you doing in a nice place like this? Okay, well, that's what happens to people. So when you keep denying the truth, then you end up all messed up. Okay? So I hope you see now, what is faith? Faith is learning to trust in what you know in your heart. So, for example, if I read a book, see, I don't read the book word for word and idolize the author. I scan the book for clues. Scan it, and I might see something there. There's a clue. There's an idea that helps me to realize something. Maybe one idea, two ideas from the book. That's enough. Okay, and I even read the Bible that way. See, I don't sit down to study the Bible. See, study is hypnotic. See, study is ingesting something to try to memorize it and to have knowledge. See, to have knowledge so that you can use it to lord it over other people, for example. See? So I let it all go. I let it go. Okay? I let it go. Then I open up the Bible to some page and look at it, and maybe nothing. Okay, so nothing. But maybe I look at the page and all of a sudden I see a verse that, oh my God, I see what it means. Okay, now why do I see what it means? Why do I understand it? Why does it have depth now? Because it's the inner testimony. See, the inner light is highlighting it for me. So the book is merely has printed letters on a page, on pieces of paper. It's the internal testimony that's the thing. The outside book, which was inspired, see, was written by someone who was inspired, but now it's like secondhand. No, see, it was alive and spontaneous and just in time. As the person wrote it, he saw, he was inspired. Okay, well, now those words are there, and they might awaken someone. See, those words might bear witness on the outside to the truth on the inside, the truth with a capital T. The truth with a capital T on the inside bears witness to the truth of what the words are saying. You see what I mean? But it's the internal testimony that's the important thing. The internal testimony, the wordless testimony, that's the important thing. Not what's on the outside. So now do you see why here's an excellent little dictum which will be of help to you, a little aphorism. Always remember, it's not who is right, but what is right. It's not who is right, but what is right. If somebody says something, then hear what they have to say, but hear it lightly. But check with your intuition. See if your intuition wordlessly says, yes, that's right. Or what if your intuition may wordlessly seem to show you that, no, there's something not quite right about what they're saying. Or nothing. You check with your intuition, you don't sense anything one way or the other. Okay, well, you heard it lightly, and you remain of no opinion. You heard what they said. It went in one ear, not the other. You're neither for nor against. You're of no opinion. Okay? You wait until you know, for sure. You wait until you wake up one morning and then see what the answer is. You see what I mean? And the other thing, it's not who is right, but what's right. So if you think, see, just because a person seems like a nice person, it doesn't mean they're a nice person. Or just because a person says something that's correct, doesn't mean that everything he says is correct, or that he has some great wisdom. Okay? It says in the Bible, out of the mouths of babes. So it doesn't matter who says it. If it's true, it's true. If a little child says 1 + 1 = 2, well, you see that that's true. You can see that 1 + 1 = 2. If Hitler says 1 + 1 = 2, well, okay, that's true. Even though Hitler said it. See, it's still true. See? So you hear what people say, but you don't idolize the person. You don't reject it. You don't drum up emotions to reject something. Nor do you drum up emotions to accept something. You remain of no opinion. Okay? And wait until you see internally, till the inner light makes you aware of what is true and what's not true. See? Well, I hope you enjoyed this little lecture about faith. My name is Roland.